So Wilfredo sent a super chat a few minutes ago asking basically how, or describing how frustrating it is that Microsoft is framing everything about their current strategy around flexibility, but then nothing is actually very flexible about it at all. And then also, conveniently, Phil and Sarah and all of the leadership at Xbox were largely absent from all of these announcements about price hikes and everything else. And I think all of that is part of the strategy. I think all of it kind of combines into what's happening. But over the last few days, I've done a lot of reading and investigations into what is probably going on behind the scenes, because there's kind of two different, or a few different rather, ways of looking at it. On the one hand, some people are saying that this is purely just like Phil Spencer being greedy. He's like, I just want to boost revenue for Xbox, so I get a bonus from Papa Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft. So I'm just going to crank the dials and rip off the knobs, and we're going to call it good. And I'm going to burn down this house before I leave at the end of the generation. Maybe. I personally don't think that's super likely. Other people are saying, oh, well, maybe, this is because they're losing money elsewhere with other projects and games that they're trying to put together. And so they're trying to save money or get increased revenue by cranking the prices up. That's probably a component of it. Others are trying to blame it entirely on things like tariffs and inflation, which certainly has an impact. That's not it's not a zero on the percentage scale of influence on all of this stuff. Yes, inflation is a thing and that will affect pricing for everything. So sure. But what's been interesting is over the last few days, if you look at Microsoft's social media pages, most of their like marketing has been framed around the push for cloud streaming. I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I wonder if I can find that post real quick. I should have bookmarked it. But a lot of their marketing has started to shift towards not just third-party hardware, such as, the ROG Xbox Ally X, which is a third-party device, but is also being marketed with heavy utilization of like xCloud and streaming there. But also, one of the big things that they mentioned in terms of updates and upgrades with Xbox Game Pass with this price hike was cloud streaming going to every tier. Now, there's different tiers of cloud streaming that, it's important to bring up, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. I saw Legendary Drops grabbed a screenshot here. One of Xbox Game Pass's hidden changes, and arguably one of the most disgusting for the future of the hobby, is that they are now monetizing game quality and resolution. As you can see here, they mentioned in their overall blog post describing what's changing, the different resolutions and quality levels that you can expect to get based on the tier that you're paying for. So if you're paying for Essential, you can stream it up to 1080p, roughly 10 to 17 megabit per second connection is what's needed. Premium, same thing. Ultimate, though, you can stream it up to 1440p, up to 27 megabits per second, which for handheld streaming, like honestly, yeah, you're talking about a device that's like this size. You don't need 4K. So, it's not that crucial. But I do think that all of this, as they've continued to push the cloud streaming stuff, it made me kind of realize something, especially as I was reading some of the other articles, and even like on MSNBC, when they were talking about this from a finance perspective, or rather CNBC, or Bloomberg was talking about this on their channels. All of the focus is on cloud streaming. Now, why might Microsoft want to put a lot of effort into pushing engagement through cloud streaming? I think it really comes down to one of the other things that's happening within Microsoft. Where are they putting $80 billion a year? They're putting it in heavy investments into their server infrastructure through Azure and through all of the other stuff that they're doing. Microsoft has an incredible suite of products when it comes to server infrastructure. A lot of them are being built up specifically with like AI in mind, with Copilot, OpenAI, and all of that stuff. But OpenAI's usefulness and AI tools in general's usefulness within the workplace, and Copilot certainly has been called into question. So when Satya goes to investors and shareholders, he needs to be able to argue that these servers are being utilized, that the investment is worth it. How do you do that? Well, you can also do that by pointing to overall engagement and utilization that comes from other products within their library and repertoire, such as cloud streaming. So what is one way you can push people into cloud streaming games more? Well, you get them onto a subscription service where you introduce it and it becomes very, very easy. How do you also push people towards cloud streaming games? Well, maybe you make it prohibitively expensive to get into actually playing the games locally on your own hardware. That's a component of it. If it's so expensive for somebody to buy a $800 premium 2 terabyte console, then they might pause and go, well, I mean, streaming is pretty nice. I could also just stream it. I have a decent internet connection. I'll just stream my games. I don't need a console. And what's the other big push they're doing? They're doing partnerships with companies like Samsung. I don't know if you've tried to buy a Samsung TV recently, but dude, all over the damn thing. They have like the built-in Xbox, xCloud, whatever streaming. And so part of the marketing push is to allow you to play games. Yeah, a world of content at your fingertips. Wow. All this free content, right? All these apps, you can play games streamed straight to your TV. You don't need no stinking console. You pair your controller straight to your TV. Look at this, dude. Gaming experience, no console required. You see, they've got Fortnite, they've got GeForce Now, Xbox Luna. It's all cloud streamed games straight to your TV. This is Xbox's vision for the future, pretty clearly. So I think like all the price hikes for actually owning games, all the price hikes for the hardware, it's all meant to kind of push you towards the one service in the form of Game Pass where you subscribe to the thing and then you can play the games through the cloud on all of your devices, right? Play Xbox on these Xboxes, and they show the Z Fold 7, shout out Z Fold 7. I think this is actually the 6. I think this is last gen, but anyway, they show the folding phone, they show the laptop, the handheld, the Xbox, and the TV. They are all equal in the eyes of Phil. All of this, I think, is going towards the vision that was set out 3, 4, 5 years ago by Phil and his team, which is just ultimately that they see it as they want you to be subscribed to Game Pass, and that is your one platform where you pay every month and you can play and watch and consume on any device you want, because convenience is the ultimate deciding factor. And yes, $30 a month is expensive for the ultimate tier. $16 for the other tier, $12 for the other, whatever it is. Yeah, those can be pricey, and the prices are only going to continue going up, just like they did with cable, just like they did with everything else. But it's all meant to try and get you locked into the ecosystem. Because if you've been playing on Game Pass for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, all of your games are there, all of your saves are there, all of your accounts are there. It becomes much harder to give it up and go elsewhere. And they also condition the audience to get used to those games being included. And so the idea of paying $70 for a new game, for example, is intolerable. It's not something you want to even think about. It's like, no, I'm going to wait till it comes to Game Pass. Which is already a sentiment we hear all of the time, where a game comes out and it's sort of mid and you go, I'll wait for Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, whatever it is. It's actually a problem within the broader industry that's really affected indies more than anything. A lot of people who would maybe in years past would have bought an indie game that was interesting for like $30-$40. Now they just decide to wait until it ends up on Game Pass. So I think like all of this starts to click together a little bit more when you view it through the eyes of Papa Satya. Maybe not through the eyes of Phil, but when you view it through the eyes of Satya Nadella, who needs to justify $80 billion a year investments into server infrastructure. And you're like, okay, so how do you do that? You push players as forcefully as you can towards cloud streaming. Okay, how do you do that? You make hardware way more expensive, and you make the copies of games more expensive by trying to push like $80 price tags on your AAA stuff. And then you also try to get everybody to subscribe to this annual subscription that includes the cloud streaming stuff that you can then push on gamers more and more and more as the years go by. Starts to make a little bit more sense. I don't think it's going to be successful though. And it goes back to what we've seen time and time again in the industry, which is that gamers are not like sports fans. They're not like movie buffs. They're not like makeup vlogger audiences. They're different. Okay. They are opinionated. They're smart. They're informed. And they're resourceful, dude. If they are fed up with what you're doing, yeah, they'll just go on your website. They'll search around, Google like crazy, find out how to cancel it, and they'll cancel it. If they're pissed off with how you're doing things, they'll just boycott you and they'll flame you on social media and I'm sure do worse. Like, gamers don't take crap. They really, really don't. There's some maybe subsets that do, where you can see like Madden every year just gets worse and is even more terrible, but somehow they still sell millions of copies. Maybe those are the exceptions, but the moment that these companies start to think that they can treat the whole industry like the way they mistreat this smaller niche group, it ends badly. It doesn't go well. And I think that we've seen a pretty overwhelming response to all of this in the last few days, which I would hope would be humbling for Xbox, because I mean, maybe it is just a coincidence that the page to cancel your Xbox subscription for Game Pass, maybe it's a coincidence that that was crashing on the day they announced this news. Maybe it's a coincidence that the Google trend, I can pull this up, trends.google. I don't know if you guys have seen this. On Google Trends, you can go and cancel Game Pass. Let's just search that. Look at this. Let's do past 30 days. Do you see this massive spike? I wonder what happened right then. Why would people be Googling that so much? If we go like the past 12 months, bro, it's not even close. There's been some periods where, like, you know, you can see right around Christmas, people Googled it for whatever reason. There just weren't a lot of games coming out, or maybe they signed up for Indiana Jones, played it, and then canceled it. So then in January, not many people did. But this is on another level. I mean, this is stratospheric. Yeah, it's also interesting the states that are more likely to cancel it. There's not a lot of data tracking in some of the northern states like Montana, for example. But if we look at other states like, you know, Oregon, people in Oregon are not okay with it. Louisiana, Texas, it's funny. Florida, but a lot of like northeastern states, I guess there's more money and so they're less impacted, or maybe it's less likely. I don't know. It's very interesting though. Related queries: Game Pass price increase, Xbox price increase. I mean, these are not search terms you want associated with your brand. So I think that this should be humbling for them. But do I think they're going to change anything? No, because like I said, I'm getting the impression that this is coming from Satya. This is coming from the CEO on high. He's setting the standards. He needs to drive server engagement. He needs more revenue because I'm sure Game Pass is not as profitable as they would like it to be. And so they're just trying to find ways to do it. And so they're being much more aggressive than they would otherwise have been. But I'm sure that they've seen a significant drop in engagement. And granted, it's anecdotal. I've canceled mine. My brothers have canceled theirs, which I found kind of surprising. I didn't talk to them before, but last night we were playing games. And I was like, yeah, did you guys hear about that? They're like, yeah, canceled mine. It's like, oh, wow. I didn't see that. So I think they just overstepped and now they're dealing with the consequences. But now you're also seeing a ton of articles being released discussing this broader topic, and it just keeps getting worse. For example, Xbox is removing Game Pass discounts on Call of Duty add-ons. So the thing I mentioned in the initial reaction video to all of this news was that it seemed to me like this was probably being done very suddenly and sharply in anticipation for Black Ops 7. The beta, of course, just dropped, which we're going to talk about a little bit later because apparently the numbers are really not very good in comparison to Battlefield. But I'm sure that they wanted to get this price hike set up so by the time Black Ops 7 comes out, they can make more money on the people signing up for the ultimate tiers. And they're also removing discounts on the add-ons because they think that even without the discount, people will still buy them. And so why bother? What these effectively looked like was, as Charlie Intel posts here, Xbox has removed the 10% discount that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members could get on add-on content for Call of Duty, including removing the discount on Call of Duty points and Black Cell as part of the changes to Game Pass this week. So as part of this whole thing, they removed the discounts. Used to be if you were a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, you'd save 10% off of all of this stuff, and they've removed that. Like they're trying desperately to find ways to trim the fat and to increase margins wherever they can, which is very, very interesting because I thought Game Pass was super profitable, but apparently they're desperately trying to increase margins, which sometimes could just be greed. They're just trying to boost numbers or something. Other times it's that they're desperately trying to save something after, you know, the accountants came in and found some holes. Jacob says, I'm starting to think the people in charge at Microsoft might be stupid. what I've said for years is that I think the problem with Satya being in charge of all of these gaming subdivisions through Phil is that Satya is like an old school Microsoft employee going back to I think he was there in the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s. And you can run a software development firm with an iron fist, and you can fire people, lay them off, hire contractors in India, and then fire those people, hire different contractors. You can do that type of thing, just burn and churn developers when they're making like security updates for Windows, when they're going through and making a crappy Windows 11 update that doesn't work. You can do that. When you're making video games, you can't do that. You're dealing with a different type of software engineer and developer. Artists and creative types like that are just different. You can't treat them the same way as like the engineers that are working at Windows. It just doesn't work. I was talking with one of the guys at IOI actually about all of this, because they of course work on their own engine in-house, and then they also have the game development side of it. And they're like, yeah, no, we have to manage teams very differently, because the team of engineers that are working on the engine, they need to be talked to and worked with differently than the people working on level design, for example. They're just different types of human beings. And so it's just, you can't treat them the same way. And I think the problem is that Satya thinks that you can treat them the same way. And then he's shocked when the product quality plummets while he's treating them like cattle, basically. It just doesn't really work. Speed Racer, thank you for the 20. Very generous. Hey, Luke, I don't usually pop into live streams, but just want to say thanks for all the YouTube videos, man. Keep up the awesome work, man. Thank you, my friend. Very generous. My goodness. You humble me. Is it what I'm wearing? It's what I'm wearing, isn't it? I knew the green was a good shirt to wear today. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you, my friend. I'm very generous again with the 20. Very generous. We're seeing this news break though too. Microsoft is apparently about to launch free Xbox Cloud gaming with ads. Remember I said it's starting to look like they really want to boost engagement on xCloud, and they really want to increase utilization of their servers. There's a really interesting breakdown I saw. I think it was through Bloomberg, but basically they were trying to describe and break down for stupid people how the macroeconomics of servers works in the AI age. Because basically, like, you can spend $50,000 on one of these AI chips and these server farms, which cost hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. They're extremely expensive, but the economics of it work if you have max utilization, if you're at 100% capacity. The problem is you're not always at 100% capacity. You know, if you have all of these machines that are capable of running, and if they're all running for the certain amount of tokens or whatever that's being redeemed, it's profitable. That works. But the moment that they're sitting idle and not working, you're not profitable. So how you make it profitable is by increasing utilization and get people to use those server farms more. And that's something which it seems like Microsoft is desperately trying to do. They're trying to greatly increase the engagement within their infrastructure, which starts to line everything up with this stuff. You know, how do we get more people to use xCloud? Make it free. Well, we can't really make it free because then that's just us burning money. Okay, well, what if we do ad-supported versions? I don't even know how this works. Do they mean that like you'll play your game and then every 10 minutes the game will pause on the start menu and then it goes and plays a 2-minute ad and then you hit continue and you keep playing for 10 minutes? I think that that's probably what they're gonna do. And can you imagine if this takes hold and becomes normalized? Like, oh God, exactly like mobile games. It's like Starfield. Oh, you want to fast travel to that planet? Oh, well, you have to watch a 30-second ad or you have to redeem this many credits. And if you want more credits, you can go and pay that through a paid mod that gives you infinite credits. You know? It just keeps getting more and more stupid. It just keeps getting more stupid. Where's the other one? I had another, yeah. I mean, all of this kind of is wrapped up interestingly in an article that Paul Tassi put together for Forbes, which I think encapsulates just even the title puts it pretty well. Xbox's strategy is becoming actively repellent to players. Yeah. I mean, just look at how the narrative has changed. A few years back, Xbox was seen as the most pro-consumer of the big three between Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. They were seen as one of the up-and-comers that probably were going to have some amazing games soon. At that point, they didn't really have a lot releasing. And to be fair, they have had some pretty solid games. Like Indiana Jones was awesome, I thought. They technically landed, like, wasn't Expedition 33 on Game Pass? I'm pretty sure it was. Like, they did get some really solid games on the platform. But at what cost? At what cost? And I think at this point, the narrative has completely shifted. And now when you hear Xbox, you think of a company that is somehow raising prices on hardware nobody was buying to begin with. They are raising prices on their one subscription service to the point where people are canceling it. And it's becoming like a gamer purity test to see who canceled it. Like, before I take your opinion seriously, did you cancel your account? That's what's happening. And it's starting to feel more and more corporate, more and more soulless. All of these countless layoffs, it's all becoming really, really distasteful. As he writes, this week, Microsoft raised prices on the Xbox Game Pass to genuinely shocking degree, following similarly large hikes on all of its current generational hardware. While it's tough times in the economy, to be sure, that's also true on the consumer side. And what Xbox is doing here is now completely incomprehensible. While other competitors like Sony finally did give in and raise hardware prices due to tariff issues imposed by the Trump administration, Xbox has now done so twice, and the end result being an Xbox Series X that costs $600, $100 more than it launched at 5 years ago, and an $800 Xbox Series X at 2 terabytes, as a 2 terabyte version at $800 again. The direct competitor to the more powerful PS5 Pro, which now costs $50 less. Xbox has no real space to do this, given that it has already been losing the console sales war badly this generation, as it did with the last one. Microsoft no longer reports exact hardware sales numbers, but if this generation started out around 2-to-1 ratio against Sony as estimated, persistent quarterly declines have now made that far more lopsided. And that's something we've seen even with player engagement and other things like physical sales in the UK, which are reported on. Same with like Japan. The Xbox Game Pass price hike feels diametrically opposed to a constant refrain from Microsoft that despite seemingly huge costs and foregone game sales, Game Pass is profitable. That's what they say, and they've said this numerous times. Xbox's president says Game Pass is profitable and good for creators, despite alleged division over the subscription model. The service apparently made $5 billion over the last fiscal year. It does take in a ton of money, but again, at what cost? And it's also, the thing with all of this stuff is it matters so much with the accounting. Are they tracking all microtransactions acquired through Game Pass versions of Call of Duty as Game Pass revenue? Or is that dropped in another bucket? Because that revenue would exist whether they played it through Game Pass or not, in my opinion. So I think like there's so many ways of playing the cup game to move the money around and make it look one way or another, but they don't share the full numbers and details. So I take it with a grain of salt. If that's true, then either this is a huge greedy grab with loyal consumers trying to squeeze them to an unprecedented degree to further margins, or Xbox Game Pass is not nearly as profitable as they're letting on, and they need to do this, especially since it's clear they are rapidly approaching a ceiling where over time subscription numbers are going to flatline once the market for live services like this are tapped. If that's the case, it would be more desperate than greedy, and neither option is good. I think that that's an important point. Either they are just being extremely greedy and it is profitable, it is sustainable, which is what they publicly have said, or they are not sustainable, it is not as profitable as it needs to be, and so they're desperately trying to increase margins. Because again, what's shocking is not that they raised prices. What's shocking is that they did so strongly and so suddenly. If they had done a $1.50 increase here and there over the next once every 3 months, they raise it by $1. I think, it would have boiled the frog slowly enough that people would have not thrown a fit over it, even though they would wake up next December, let's just say, with a significantly more expensive lineup of subscription offerings. But I think people would have gotten used to it and it just would have been like, inflation. But because they did it so suddenly and so sharply, it makes it feel like a bit of a panic move. It's sort of like a knee-jerk reaction to it. The end result here seems like a company that is actively trying to repel players, be they existing or new ones. Why would you ever buy a more expensive Xbox, less powerful Xbox, over a rival from PlayStation? Why would you agree to a $360 a year subscription service that jumped 50% in an instant with no coherent justification for that? Well, Paul, to be fair, did you hear, Paul? They are bringing 15-year-old Assassin's Creed games. Checkmate. You didn't think about that, did you? That explains it. And this is not even addressing another big issue over the course of the past year, which is Xbox doling out loads of its games to PlayStation, PC, and occasionally the Switch, meaning having an Xbox console or staying in the ecosystem feels entirely unnecessary. I do not think it is impossible for Microsoft to be a big gaming leader by leaning almost exclusively into Game Pass, but that would require, 1, enough high-quality first-party games each year to be worth it, 2, the ability to partner with bigger third-party games that also launch on the service, and 3, a desire to keep most of this locked into Game Pass, not spread through 4 different platforms, and lastly 4, a non-absurd price, as even if it did all that, $30 a month is one of the most expensive media subscriptions in the market. Right now, it has none of those things going for it, and unless something changes, this grand experiment does not seem like it will have long-term legs moving forward, and I am starting to legitimately worry about the Xbox's brand continued existence as a whole, given the decisions that Microsoft has been making, especially because we know Satya is not afraid of just shutting something down if it doesn't make sense. He'll just shut it down. He's no emotional attachment to Xbox at all. The one saving grace is that they are $70 billion in the hole after even just one acquisition. So they've spent a lot of money and they need to justify that. But it could be that debt is coming due in a colloquial sense. You know, they're looking for ways to make that make sense. But I do think that this is a key component and consideration. The moment something becomes uncool in the gaming space or gross or distasteful, gamers shut down. If we find Ubisoft cringy or their game design cringy, you will hear about it 15 ways to sundown all day, every day. You say a word about Assassin's Creed, you'll get 15 people in chat immediately. Yeah, it sucks. Like instantly, right? The moment that you hear something about loot boxes, everybody floods in and is like, yeah, those things suck ass. And now Xbox is becoming the punching bag. And it's crazy because just a few years ago, they were viewed as like the up and coming underdog that probably, you know, was, even though they were not releasing a ton of games at the time and the quality was kind of up in the air, they were on their way and they had some amazing studios. And they had a fantastic price point. But now, I don't know, man, it's not looking great, because I mean, just I would love to know how many subscriptions they lost when this news went out, because I think the number was probably pretty steep. And I think enough of those people basically made a choice. Like when I canceled that subscription, I made a choice that like for $30 a month, it's no longer that bang for the buck value. So for me, if I really want to play, God forbid, Starfield or something, I'll just buy the copy of the game myself. Or if I really think this new game coming to Game Pass day one is interesting and is something I want to try and I don't want to pay $70, you just sign up for a month and then cancel the app immediately. Like, problem solved. Which is why I wouldn't be surprised if they start trying to limit it to, like, 3-month signups. Like you can only buy 3-month bundles or something, so they get you locked in, something like that. But it's just crazy because, again, every single time they get the chance to like win people over, they have a couple of good months, they just shoot themselves in the foot with a bazooka. It really is incredible. They had Obsidian, I always want to say Obsidian for some reason, Oblivion remastered earlier this year. One of the most successful games of the year. Why not just ride that into the sunset? You had a great launch for Game Pass, and then immediately they're like, okay, yeah, well, we're gonna raise console prices. They're about to launch Call of Duty. Okay, we can focus on that, let that be the talk of the town. But no, instead we're gonna just nuke all of our goodwill with the community and do this instead. It's just ridiculous. It really is. It's shocking. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of months, but as of right now, I just man, they really are speedrunning, tearing this apart. Lo-Fi, thank you for the 5. Phil Spencer has had a decade plus to prove he is far worse than Don Mattrick ever could dream of being. I think, maybe that's an interesting topic in and of itself, like Phil Spencer versus Don Mattrick the legacy. And we break that down. Personally, I mean, Don Mattrick really did unironically speed run running Xbox into the ground. And some of the stuff he did, like, as much as we meme about this, Phil Spencer's strategy seems to be take Microsoft's money, buy big studios, get a massive portfolio, put those in a library and sell it as a monthly subscription. Okay, not a crazy idea at all. The current offense that he is being accused of is raising the prices to egregious levels, which I think he is doing. Don Mattrick wanted to take one of the world's biggest and most successful gaming consoles and turn it into a cable box. So in my opinion, Don Mattrick is worse because like he was just straight up big dumb, like to a comical degree, which they did, yes. So I personally think it's going to be hard to top Don Mattrick because he did some insane stuff. But yeah, I do think it's an interesting conversation, certainly. It's very interesting. I think part of what's frustrating about this more than anything is that it's been a roller coaster. You know, Don Mattrick, the moment he took over, it was just downhill. With Phil, it seemed like, oh, they're buying studios. Oh, they're empowering studios to make the games they really want to do. He's going to support them. And this is a great value, all that. So we were on the up and up. And then he just drove it straight into the ground with the crazy pricing and all this stuff and layoffs and all that. So I think that's a big component of it. I'm sorry to keep rambling about the Xbox stuff. It's just continued to be baffling to me. Again, TLDR, TLDW, I guess, if you happen to watch these videos in reverse somehow. I think Microsoft is pushing Xbox into doing all of this stuff because I think Microsoft needs to boost their engagement and utilization on the servers that they're investing tens upon tens upon tens of billions of dollars into. And so Game Pass, of course, with recurrent revenue is a huge component of that, but also getting xCloud built out and utilized by as many people as possible is a huge component of this vision, which is what this is intended to do with the free version serviced through ads, and then also them adding cloud streaming to every tier of Game Pass. I think that that's a huge component of it as well. They're trying to get it normalized, get people committed to the ecosystem, and I think as far as building an ecosystem is concerned, Microsoft may be the worst in the world. It really is incredible. Throughout their entire corporate history, they have managed every opportunity to blow their opportunity at building an ecosystem. Going back to early Windows and how they responded to like Apple starting to get some momentum going, how they handled the Zune. Remember the Zune? No, exactly. How they handled their own Windows phone. I mean, they really, no matter where you look, they are terrible at building ecosystems and getting people locked in. And this is just another example of it. It's another example of it. You know, the old saying is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. For Microsoft, it seems like you miss 100% of the shots you take desperately and forcefully. It's crazy. It really is crazy. Phantom, thank you for the 20. I told my dad about this Xbox thing and he's canceling his subscription. He has never taken it offline in 20 years he's had it. Xbox has been our way of playing together until he got a PC a couple of months ago. Well, boom. I think that Xbox's goal has been to get people to kind of shrug off the idea of owning a physical piece of hardware like a console, and therefore they sign up for Game Pass and play through the cloud. But I think what's instead going to happen is that they're just going to end up pushing everybody to PC, which to a certain extent you can be like, oh, well, then they still win because they own Windows. Yes. Yeah. But I don't think that they're buying content through Game Pass or Xbox's store when they build that PC. I think they build the PC and go to Steam, you know? So yeah, I think it's a huge strategic blunder on their part. And whether it's Phil's fault or it's Satya's fault or a combination of the two, who knows, maybe it's Sarah's fault. Because like I said for years, I think that Sarah is being set up to basically take over. I think Phil probably retires at the end of this generation and Sarah is going to be named the new head of Xbox. Locking it in. She technically is. I think she's the president of Xbox right now, but I think she'll take over for Phil. That's my guess.